Hello and welcome to the Night Owl Philanthropy podcast. I'm your host, Dean Jones, and in this series I ask charity leaders and change makers to tell us about their why, the purpose, experiences and values that sit behind their work. Each episode goes beyond job titles and campaigns to uncover the real stories and motivations behind social impact leadership and what it takes to stay resilient and grounded in a demanding sector. Today, we're exploring those themes through the lens of sport, education and community, and what happens when a professional rugby club puts its heritage and values at the heart of social change. And I'm really pleased to be joined by Jordan Letts, CEO of Northampton Saints Foundation, which uses the power of sport and the values of rugby to inspire, support and educate people of all ages, helping them stay in education, move towards work and feel a sense of belonging in their community. Jordan, thank you so much for joining me. Let's start, as we always do on this podcast, with that central question. What's your why for the work you're doing through Saints and its community?
Thank you for having me first, Dean. And I think when you talk about a why, it's quite an interesting thing for me personally, because I'm kind of living, I suppose, my dream in the role that I have. I was very similar to the young people that we support, and I wanted to make a difference as my journey through education happened. It led me going to Malton College, and from there I then went on to university. And I think when I went to university, I really wanted to start a charity or start delivering charitable programs to really make a difference for children who need support. Wind on 10 years. We now have a huge charity, which is incredibly successful. And you can only look back of fond memories of that journey, but also what's to come. So my why is definitely making a difference for young people, which has now developed into supporting vulnerable, disadvantaged adults as well, and people who just need an arm around them at that time.
Can you identify a point that's really stimulated that interest in that area, either before Malton College? Is there anything in particular that kind of has led you down that path, really?
Yeah, so I found education incredibly challenging. I was diagnosed with ADHD from a young age, and I remember times where I could barely sit in a classroom because I couldn't function in that environment. I remember there was times where I had meetings to try and get me back into school. And it actually turned out that I finished school with very limited qualifications. No qualifications really that would be a standpoint now in education. So I took it upon myself to want to, one, prove a point, and two, show other young people that actually you can go on and achieve things even if you don't do so well in your education from a young age.
An inspiring story in itself. So for anyone meeting you now for the first time, how do you introduce yourself and describe what you do at Northampton Saints Foundation?
I think if any of my team hear this or watch this back, they always laugh at the job title that I have. And I think the reason for that is I see myself as one of them. I see myself as someone who is with an organization that's doing incredible things, but the purpose of why we do what we do stands out for me as we're all on a journey together. And if I'm asking people to do something, then I need to be capable and want to do that myself. So I think we've been able to build an incredible team at the foundation. And for me personally, I'm so proud of what it's become, but also can see the potential that this organization has to keep pushing boundaries and make incredible opportunities for people in employment, but also to shape young people's futures as well.
And first of all, as we're sort of in early February right now, February 2026, and Northampton Saints are positioned in first place in the Gallagher Premiership table. So that's great news for any supporters of either the club or the foundation. Indeed, that success feeds into the success of the foundation in one way or another, I imagine. Is that right?
It absolutely is, yeah. So the on-pitch performance is always really positive for the charity because the club give us the opportunity to fundraise on match days. So when the Saints do well and get things like home semi-finals or round of 16 ties, it's an increased opportunity for us to gain revenue from those fixtures. In terms of our integration with the club, we very much go under the mantra of one team. So whether your role is with the foundation or it's with the club, there's a real buy-in to why we're doing what we do. And you can see that in the players as well. They genuinely care about the young people that we support. And even some of the players come on really key journeys with our organization. They I suppose start with a real apprehensive nature of not knowing what the charity does or anything like that. They come in, see the programs, they really get a buy-in to wanting to be part of that. An example of that would be Tom James. So Tom James is as the professional athlete, he has Wednesdays off. And I would genuinely reckon over the last 3 years, he's come into the prison probably 40 times, and he supports the men on our prison programs to help them reintegrate back to the community. And that's one example of a player going above and beyond to really help the people that we support.
You said the word prison there. You're talking about a prison. There are people that come from a prison. Explain that a bit more.
Yeah, so I suppose the prison element came about from probably something that a lot of people would see as a failure. Wanted to make a positive story out of it. So, when we started as an organization, we've obviously had huge amounts of success. And by success, I mean children going back into education, employment, and training, and us developing and making people stronger for the rest of their lives. We had one case where that wasn't the scenario. We had helped them to a point where this young person had gone on and achieved incredible things with their time with us, but actually ended up in a custodial setting. And I was quite sad about that, and it made me feel that we deserve to give opportunities to those people because I know that person wasn't a bad person. So we then spoke to a prison called HMP High Point, and I went over to the jail to speak to some of the men who were in prison and try and get an understanding of feeling of how our charity could help and support. What that then led to was a program that we run in prisons, and a program where we do level 2 gym instructor and level 3 personal training to then reintegrate them back into the community upon release. I think when people hear that we work in prisons, they're very much like have an attitude of, well, they've done something wrong. Why do you want to do that? Whereas I feel if we don't help those people, it's going to become a bigger cycle, and we're going to see more children like the children we work with if we don't support those adults into meaningful employment upon release.
That's incredibly inspirational, I think. When someone asks what the foundation actually does beyond the rugby, you talked about the work you're doing with prisoners, people in the criminal justice system. How do you explain it in simple, everyday language in a way that's going to engage and gain that sort of essential support that you're looking for?
Yeah, I think for us, it's really tough to articulate a charity that works with just under 7,000 people a year and has 17 different programs and 54 members of staff. It's quite challenging, and ours then goes to kind of impact measurements around wanting to build safer, stronger, and more connected communities. And our staff, we had an event like 2 weeks ago now, an impact event, and one of the members of staff stood up and said, when young people start to feel heard, they start to heal. And it really resonated with me because ultimately that one phrase is exactly what we do. We provide safe places for young people to feel heard and feel a place of belonging, and then they give us the opportunity to really empower their lives, and grow their confidence. For me, it's not necessarily always about getting that job. Sometimes it is about just making sure that they're on a journey to become the best versions of themselves.
Just thinking about your early influences again, what was it about sport and social impact that sort of came together for you and that sort of helped you realize that rugby in particular could be more than just a game?
So when I had my, I suppose, real challenging time in education, the one thing that I had was rugby, and rugby played such an important tool in my life from that day forward. Not even that part of my life, and I always had rugby. I played rugby to a good standard, and I remember looking back and just going, when I get somewhere in life and I want something to look back on, what would I be proud of? And it's about carrying that message of what rugby is. The sport and the game has such incredible values which are installed within it around teamwork, respecting people. For me, you can take that into so many different walks of life. It doesn't necessarily need to be a charitable thing. Also, people in leadership, if they play rugby, they're normally really good leaders because you're used to bringing people together. You're used to different departments and teams working collaboratively. Used to working with different organizations. I think in terms of sport and the social positive, the angle that can have, it can be life changing to people. We very rarely pick up a rugby ball in our charity, but yet we're the charity arm of Northampton Saints.
Mm.
And the reason for that is the values talk enough for themselves. the values of our game, if we can install those into young people's lives and get the young people to local rugby clubs, whether to play or just to be part of them, the network of people that are in those rugby clubs it's remarkable. And even now, my local rugby clubs still support the people that I've met from that, still support the charity. They support every part of my career.
Great to hear. Was there a particular person or coach within that rugby club or at school, or an experience early on that shaped how you think about leadership and also responsibility in sport? You talked about teamwork, which I thought was really well articulated, but that leadership and responsibility element as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I went to Malton College, I had a course tutor called John Phillips. And
Hmm.
John Phillips obviously used to play for the Saints. I suppose he was probably one of the first people who really put an arm around me and said that you're going to be okay. I got into Malton College purely based off of my rugby ability, not because of my qualifications. So I think when I was at Malton, I very much had to just try and see what I could resit and go through that journey. And I think in rugby, you have a lot of people who really, really care, and they care about you as an individual, but also to develop how you play rugby. I remember I got to the end of my course at Malton and John turned around to me and said, "You need to go on to university." And I was like, "I don't want to go. Like, no part of me wants to go and sit in education for another couple of years. I just don't see that working." John actually then filled out my personal statement with me. He guided me to do it. He's pushed me as hard as he could. I will forever be thankful for that, because I wouldn't be the person I am now had I have not gone to university at the point that I needed it.
Well, I hope he listens to that and hears it as well.
I've
What did
told
you?
him many times.
Good. What did your path into Northampton Saints Foundation look like at the beginning, and what convinced you this was the right place to put your energy and your reputation and everything else that you put into it?
Yeah, so when I first joined Saints, so I was at Northampton Saints from 2015, and even that was a really interesting journey. So I remember doing my interview, and straight away I knew I wanted to work for Northampton Saints. Like, I knew that the brand of the club, like everything it stood for, it meant something to me personally, and the club is kind of ingrained into me, I suppose. And then within that journey, I started a program called Engage. Engage is now one of our biggest social inclusion based programs. So it supports young people who are out of education, and it guides them on to kind of the next step in their life, whether that be into a new specialist setting, or it might be that children remain with us for up to 3-4 years. And we are that single place where we can actually speak to the young people and get under the skin of what is actually going wrong for them. Had I have had that program when I was younger, I would have remained in education for a lot longer. So it comes from lived experience and everything from there. So then in 2018, when the charity was established, I was 2P'd over to the charity. And I've been on that growth journey ever since. So I think at the start, there was only 3 of us in the organization. Every single part and program that we have now, I can't claim all of them, but a lot of them have kind of come from an opportunity that we've seen a gap where children need support, or like the prison, where we see that potentially we need to put additional support around people when it does go wrong.
I'm going to look at sort of building and leading Northampton Saints Foundation now. And when you first stepped into the CEO role, I think you mentioned that you referred to 2018. What year did you step into the role as CEO?
So I started in January 25, so I've been in there just over a year.
Yeah, great. And what did the foundation look and feel like on the ground at that time? The team and the programs and the culture.
Yeah, I think for me the culture has always been so child focused that leading this organization is like, it's a privilege, because it's not about individuals, it's not about people coming in on huge department level roles. For me, it's about what difference do we actually make as an organization? And I know earlier we spoke about social value and impact. It's really hard for us at times to articulate, one, what we do, but also what we've stopped happening. Because a lot of the time you're working with these young people, and maybe if we weren't working with them, what would their lives have looked like? So social value has given us that opportunity. And I tried to embed that straight away into this organization, because I know for sure that our staff are doing so much good work. I really want us to be regarded as an organization that don't just advertise we work with 7,000 children. We actually tell people what difference we've made to young people's and young adults' lives. That's where that it comes from. And that project alone, it wasn't about me. It wasn't about a certain individual in there leading social value. It was about all of our staff being upskilled in what it is and how we can gain value for the work that we're doing.
Obviously, there are lots of successes that we can focus on, and the good work that you're doing should be celebrated. What were the sort of early challenges in sort of persuading people inside the club and in the wider community that the foundation could be a serious force for good, not just a badge on a shirt?
Yeah, I think we're always on that journey, and I think even when I look back to the club in its first earliest stage of it, the programs that we deliver were operating under the club, so it wasn't a charity, and we couldn't get the exposure to grants and opportunities like we do now. So I think a big part of it for me is about the relationship, and the size of the charity is only as good as that relationship with the club. So no matter how big you want the charity to grow, if that isn't partnered well with the club, it's going to have huge issues and challenges. So I think in terms of my role and the culture of both organizations, it's something that I care a lot about, because we need to work as one team, and that is the journey. Examples of that are this tonight. It's either tonight or next week, is an under-20s England game at Saints. And one of our members of staff from the foundation is helping with the safeguarding element of that game. That isn't something that's under their normal day-to-day role, but actually that whole one team blanket is that we're all there to ready to step in and help when people need it.
So building capacity as well, helping support,
Yeah,
and that goes
absolutely.
both ways, I imagine. But can you share a
Absolutely.
moment, sort of early on when you thought, "Yeah, this is why I work for the foundation, and this is why the community needs the foundation, and the foundation needs to exist."
Yeah, and I mean, I've had so many moments in my time at the foundation that I could pull upon, and I think some of them are truly embedded in me, and I probably get quite emotional if I speak about some of them. But one that does really, really stand out is a young person who was referred to us, who ultimately I knew there was something going on in her life, and it was always going to be a challenge to try and get her to open up and understand. And I was the person that she chose to disclose quite significant information to. And I remember it was like almost a turning point in my life and hers, because I was able to then provide the support that was needed about that, and also support through loads of steps, which meant that that young person then got the support, and there was actually a justice for what had happened. So I think in terms of like my own journey, I can think about multiple of times where I've been out and about and I've seen a child 10 years, 5 years later, after them, us working with them, and they come over and say, you through the foundation truly like changed my life. And to me, that is my why, back to the first question. And it's the purpose for want this organization to continually grow. I want it to grow, but I want the quality of what we deliver currently to remain the same, whether we've got 54 people or we've got 1,000. It needs to be exactly the same.
And there was something that surprised me in your response, the word "she." So it was a female recipient of the support that you provided, which moves into that area of inclusion and diversity. So is that a challenge that you have in terms of the perception of the organisation being specifically geared towards men and boys? How long have you been as inclusive as you, by the sounds of you are?
Yeah, so that young person I referred to would have been in the second year of the charity being there. So probably it was closer to like 2020 times. At the start of the programs, it was a massively male dominated provision, and we had to work really hard on that, because for me it's not about, like, people are struggling across the world. It's not just one gender that is struggling. So I was very much like, I need to make sure that these barriers to these children are broken down. A lot of that came back to the brand of the Saints actually probably working against us in the format of girls don't play rugby, or didn't at all then. So you have to kind of then work on that really heavily. And the club now does a fantastic projects, and there's so much integration with women's rugby and making that sport more knowledgeable, obviously with the Loughborough partnership as well. Like, there's such strength there. But yeah, we had to go, actually, no, these are rugby's values. We're not getting them to play rugby. We're trying to get the values of the game to change people's lives. So yeah, I think it was definitely a journey, but now there isn't really an obvious split that we have. It's just really clear that anyone is welcome to attend.
Moving on to sort of the theme of collaboration, From your perspective, does really good collaboration between the club, the foundation, perhaps local partners actually look like in practice? And how does that work? You talked about the prison service as well within that, so you might want to go back to that or any other examples you can think of, really.
Yeah, so again, there's there's multiple. We we do a lot with the club, and I think it's as much about us making sure that we're delivering outcomes that also the club want to achieve. So strategically, the club have a section of their strategy which refers to community. Community is ultimately us and the community rugby department that sits within the club. I think there's so many. So an example of our employability programs. So we work with young people who are either struggling within mainstream settings. So it might be Northampton College, Gresham College, where they're really struggling to remain within their classrooms there. We ultimately take them out of those settings and we put them into an employability qualification. And we use partners from the club, like Travis Perkins and organizations like that, where we can get bespoke work experience opportunities. Barclays is another local partner who we're doing sessions only this week on CV development and trying to help them and guide them. So in terms of collaboration for us, it's incredible when an organization locally supports and financially helps the charity. But actually, the real core of why we do what we do is to get these young people into employment. And if we can get these young people into employment, it means that we're going to change their life, not short term, but we're going to change that bubble around that child as well.
If we followed a young person who's disengaged from school or an adult coming through your social inclusion or justice programs, what might their journey with you look like from the first contact to where you hope they'll end up in the final stages of their time with you? And hopefully there aren't final stages. They stay with the club in one form or another, whatever happens.
Yeah, that last point is actually a really interesting one because we had a young person that we were supporting, and for me, I always saw so much potential in this lad, and school didn't. They didn't see. They saw him as a troublemaker and everything, and he's now a member of staff of the
Oh,
foundation.
right.
So
Yeah, there you
we
go.
took him on board, and actually, I think when I look back at his journey, he was a very different child to the member of staff we now have. He wanted to work with young people to support children. I mean, his story is very similar to mine. He felt like education didn't provide that wraparound care that he needed, and actually now he's in employment helping other children who are in that position. So yeah, I think it's kind of like a full journey approach to it. It's when children first come to us, they're obviously really anxious and nervous and apprehensive about what that could be. We also work inside schools. So sometimes the children that are coming into our sessions, it's more about actually the first initial conversation and that trust. Trust is a huge thing, and you have to earn that. You have to show them that you're not just ticking a box and turning up for the sake of it. You have to be present for young people and support them. And that's what our staff do. We aim to create safe places and give children a sense of belonging when they're with us, which enables them to actually positively then influence the journey that they have with the charity.
And what sort of challenges would you say people are bringing with them when they join your programs? You talked about one of the examples just a moment ago. Beyond what you might see on a project summary or a funding bid, what sort of things are they bringing with them on when they start working or when you start supporting them?
Do you mean in terms of their challenges of what they bring?
Yeah,
Yeah,
their
so
challenges. Yeah.
so when I first started at the Saints, it was very much all about behaviour,
Mm,
and I think the world has shifted to actually that behaviour comes from something. So there's an understanding that they might be mentally struggling, which then makes them behave in the way that they do. It may be around the guidance and support that they have at home, which makes them behave the way that they do. So I have this thing installed in me that no child was born a bad child.
mm,
It's always about us growing and making sure that we're present for these young people to show them what is wrong and right, but also to show them that people do have belief in them, no matter what their journey has been. I think that the way in which the pandemic was and how it is obviously that generation of children are now the children that we're supporting right now on our programs. And you can visibly see in the children that I come into contact with in the charity a real disengagement around social situations or conversations and how they happen. I actually always say, like, I'm so glad I grew up when I grew up, and I really struggled in that environment I grew up in.
Hmm.
But it's a pretty bleak environment for children to grow up in now.
Mm.
So yeah, we need to be them trusted adults that can that can show these children trust and support and guidance.
You shared a couple of stories. Are there any other anonymized stories of someone whose life has changed through the foundation that really stays with you and captures why you're trying to do what you're doing?
Yeah, like there's genuinely so many, and it's always it's quite a I don't know. I feel privileged to be in the position and have worked with as many people as we have.
Mm.
And it's I've got a one that stands out, and as I was mentioning to you before, she actually came into contact with my wife in a different environment. So we have a beauty salon together, and this young girl went into the salon and was having her treatments done, and my wife was talking to her about or where she went to school and everything like that. And she went, I used to go to the Saints. And Hannah, my wife, then just heard the conversation out. And this young person at the end of the conversation, Hannah then just said, do you know Jordan? And she was just like, oh my God, how do you know Jordan? And she was like, that's my husband. So
Yes.
that young person then came back to the foundation, I think it was 2, 3 weeks ago.
Right.
She drove there in a really, really nice car. And I remember seeing her for the first time. I hadn't seen her in probably 7 years. And she came over, and we had just about an hour and a half just talking about what the foundation was when she came. And I took her around to see all of the venues, classrooms, how many staff we have now. And she was honestly like in awe of what this organization's become. And I think things like that make the tough days incredible, and they make I don't know, it's just a glowing opportunity where you see what you have managed to achieve in one young person's example. You were that stability that they needed at that point, and now we've got an advocate for what we do in that person. So yeah, they now work in a residential foster home, again supporting children who were very similar in similar situations to themselves.
The question, "What is your why?" It couldn't feature more strongly in that whole experience, could it? You know, the fact that she's then gone on to work in a foster care environment, and that has become her why, and all positive stuff. The why is the positive stuff as well, and
Yeah,
hopefully,
yeah. I
as much
It's
as
really
say,
interesting actually, because when we were developing the prison program, I went to go speak to the performance staff at the club, and the club had it was a massive picture that has why, and it's now in the tunnel. So if you ever get the opportunity to go to the Saints and see the tunnel that's there, there's a picture that says why in the middle. It's the badge of the club, and then behind it has all of the pictures that all of the players have, of even memories with their families and their reasons of why they're at the club. But I feel like why the whole journey of what a why could be for anyone, it's so installed in rugby from a young age
mm,
about culture, about environment, about being the best version of yourself. That's a lot of people's why, and you can just see that glowing around what the club is.
that's great. The next question and section leads nicely on from that, and it's about the power and limits of sport. So people often say sport changes lives. From where you sit, where is that true, and where do we need to be more honest about what sport alone can and can't do you think?
Yeah, I think sport has an incredible opportunity to really guide people's futures. I think in terms of what it is, there's a real issue, I would say, in professional sport, both rugby, football, and other industries, where you go like, if you don't make it as a professional athlete, how do you convert that lived experience of being a high level sports person into a career? And you see that all of the time. Like, you see players leaving the game due to injury or anything. How are they then going to convert that into actually what they want to do with their lives in the future? Um, and I'm not sure how much you or anyone who actually listens to this in the future will know, but the Saints has a player benevolent fund, and that supports players who become on hard times as a result of either injuries, or it might just be they're having some real difficulties after rugby. The charity supports that. So the benevolent fund sits under our organisation, and for us, that's about providing people opportunity as well when they're really, really struggling, just to try and stay framed in with sport. I spoke, it was probably about 6 months ago now, in the House of Commons about community sport and the way in which that has a great opportunity. I think when you look at the outcomes across rugby, so if you look at all the rugby charities, we're working with 110,000 people a year. And the biggest challenge that we have as organisations is around long-term funding understanding. It's kind of, you go grant to grant, And that's really difficult because you can't then get good people if you're on a year contract. So
Mm.
if we want to make significant difference in this space, we're looking at massive funding opportunities around the sports. I do think rugby and all sport can have a real positive impact on people's lives. But you also see things like art. Art is also another thing around therapy, animals, and everything. So there's so many incredible organizations out there that I think are looking for the same thing in terms of long-term support.
I completely agree. What do you think it is about rugby and about Northampton Saints, their history, heritage, and values that you think gives the foundation a distinctive platform compared perhaps with other community organisations? And there is a story behind the sort of heritage and the link to community support, I think, with Saints. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Northampton Saints Rugby Club was set up in 1880 as a boys' improvement school. And when we kind of researched this and looked into it, I think the thing that is really stark is actually the foundation now is reliving what the club was set up to do in 1880. That's really special. The connection that Northampton has with the fans and the people that live there, I feel like the population of Northampton are really proud to be from there.
Yeah.
I think Northampton doesn't look as glamorous as it should do, but I think if you go around the town or you hear the journey and the story of the sports clubs, you hear the journey of the people who have lived here,
Mm,
people are passionate about what Northampton is. And I feel a huge privilege to be able to lead an organisation that's doing that.
mm,
We also have a heritage department within our charity. And this isn't it for many. I don't ever want it to be seen as a box tick. For us, it actually genuinely resonates with
mm,
what the charity is doing.
mhm,
And they've had some incredible projects where they're looking back at generations like the 50s and 60s and talking to the men and archiving their stories, but also running events where we have exhibitions on items that have been donated or like given to us for a period of time is what this club is all about. It's all about the history, it's all about the culture, it's all about the environment, that what we've come from and where we're going. I think over the last couple of years, the club has seen huge success,
mhm.
and the huge success is always underpinned by that heritage.
When I follow my son around when he's playing rugby at different clubs, and he's not playing as much more recently, but if I go to those clubs, more often than not, when you have your beer after the game, um, across all of the walls there'll be photographs of former players, and then you'll have a bigger shirt, a Saints shirt on the wall, where people are really proud that one of their players has made it onto the Saints team. So that heritage and that pride isn't just in Northampton. It surrounds the club in many different ways, I think.
Yeah, it was an absolute privilege. So, like, I think 3 weeks ago, we had a benevolent fund past players lunch, and I mean, I wasn't a past player of the Saints, but I got invited to go to that in my role of kind of supporting what the fund is, and I think just to see the connection in that room was just remarkable. The Benevolent Fund is chaired by the Director of Player Recruitment and Retention in Paul Shields. And Shieldsy has an amazing relationship with all of the past players, or maybe not all of them, but a lot of them. So he runs events where all the past players who can make it come along to. And it's just a really moving thing. You've got generations who from probably the 50s and 60s and maybe even before that in a room with men who played over the last couple of years, and it really just shows the purpose of what our club is, a place where once if you've played once, that's fine. If you've played 100 times, that's also fine.
Yeah.
You're on this club, and just to watch the men and how they spoke to each other and how they communicated, it was just lovely because they all have that proudness of wearing the shirt, of being part of the club, and contributing towards its history.
How do you navigate the tension between the performance side of the club and the community mission when sort of priorities inevitably pull in different directions at times? Because there is an element of that, isn't there? Isn't tension, I think, sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's regular communication and just clear communication. Like, I think as a charity, you could always be seen as that organization that wants, like, take, 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 take. But
Mhm.
actually, it goes so many more ways than that. So I can think about examples of when the new kit was delivered for the season, and the kit man was struggling with that, the time to actually put all of the players' names on before they come.
Mm.
If there was new signings, there was then new initials that they needed to put on everything.
Mm,
And then some of our young people would then help with what
right.
he was doing with that. So,
Mm,
and actually, it's a good opportunity for our young people to gain work experience. I think from my perspective, it's very much about just being mature about the fact that actually they do have busy times. It's not always that they don't want to do something. It's actually being understanding of their environment. Um, and we can't ever encroach on that. So a lot of the charitable stuff that we ask the players to do, it's very much if you would like to. It's not be here, do this. It's very much like if you feel like this is aligned to your values, come
mm,
along and be part of it.
mm,
And the integration with the playing squad is amazing. I meet Phil Dowson regularly, and we just have like really open conversations on when they're available and when they're not.
mhm,
So yeah, it's kind of part of that network, and I do the same with Julia Chapman at the club, so the chief exec of the club.
mm.
We have regular contact and understanding around what we can and can't do, and I think it's just about being clear and transparent with each other as well.
Are there any misconceptions that you encounter perhaps regularly about club charities or sport for good work
Yeah.
that you find yourself pushing back against, perhaps?
Yeah, I think a big one is that we're funded by Premiership Rugby or by the club. So the charity is set up as a standalone organisation, and we, other than the opportunity to fundraise on match day, and this isn't me saying it's a negative thing because we should be a standalone organisation, but I think the conception would always be that organisation doesn't need funding because actually they're partnered with Northampton Saints. I think, yes, sometimes it's about dispelling that myth and actually going, no, we are on our own and we are an organization that are proud of that. But also it's that connection and responsibility that we share across club and foundation. So it's definitely that. And also just the bit around rugby.
Yeah.
Like I said at the start, like by us not delivering rugby doesn't mean that we don't have that symbiotic relationship of the values of the game.
Thank you. In terms of your sort of leadership and then the pressure that comes with being a leader and what you've learned, thinking about your own sort of leadership journey, what's been the steepest learning curve for you as a CEO of a club based charity? And if you don't mind me saying, you're a relatively young CEO. So some of these experiences will be, will come as quite a shock, possibly. I don't know. How's it been?
Yeah, I think I absolutely love it. Like I genuinely find, and I might be really brave in saying this, but this is probably one of the not easiest roles that I've had, but it's the role where you are overseeing a lot of people who are incredibly talented within their roles. And for me, it's about bringing teams together. And then I relate that back to playing rugby and develop and how I was grown in that space. Like when I played senior rugby for the first time, I was still the youngest in that room. And to me, it's never been about age. It's always been about just showing honesty and integrity and being the strongest version of yourself. And don't get me wrong, there's days that I'm like, oh my god, this is overwhelming, there's so much going on, but you have to believe in the team that are around you as well. And I think for me, I've had two incredible mentors across this journey, and I will never be able to repay the thanks that I have to them. So one is John Drown, who is now the chair of trustees for the foundation.
Right.
He is a non-exec of Northampton Saints. And in the earliest stage at the club, he was like, I really could help you. And I think he just saw potential in me that I will never be able to say thank you enough for that. And we meet regularly, and we have done since over the last probably 8 years now. And he's always been a real good support and guide. And then the other one is a guy called Leon Mangan. So Leon was at Salesforce. He's now with PwC. And again, he just adds a completely different perspective to my world. He doesn't really necessarily understand the day to day of what we do. But in terms of process and just sense checking and guidance and reassurance, it's really good. I think whenever someone at my age takes a role like this, you would always get imposter syndrome, thinking probably that you're not good enough to do it or it's not the right time.
Mm,
But I think you just got to kind of take those leaps at times where you feel uncomfortable and roll with them. And I think with the team that I have at the foundation, I feel honored to be leading them, but I also know their ability and their capability. So when my time does come, to move on from this charity. I want it to be in the best place possible. And I would love nothing more than for one of those leaders below me to then take that role.
Yeah, what a nice thought. Thank you for that. Have there been moments where you've questioned whether you could keep going in your role? And if so, what pulled you through those points? By the sounds of it, not, because you said it's, it's a good fit for you, but have there been moments, and what do you do to ensure that you stay on track and stay motivated and focused and have that will to carry on?
Yeah, definitely. Like, there's always times where you feel, I think because I've been at this role, I've been with the organization for such a long period of time,
Yeah.
I always question whether I've given everything I can give to this organization. And by that, I mean, could someone come and do it better or differently to support more children in a better way? So my bit doesn't always go to me personally. It goes to, does this need fresh eyes now? And I think that's a real honest thing that I always have and question with myself. And every year, the charity has looked so different that it almost feels like a new job every year. So, yeah, I think until we get to the place where it's been, I've done everything physically possible within what I've done for the charity, I could then stand back and be proud of that achievement. I think while I'm in it, it's very much, yeah, you're always learning, and I'm so open to that. I'm so open to feedback and wanting to be the best version of myself that, yeah, there will inevitably be a time that I do move on from the charity, but I want to make sure that the charity is set up in a way that there isn't a single point of failure. It's actually that everyone is incredible within their roles, and I actually develop them further to hopefully one day take what this role is.
Well, you're giving me a lot of confidence in that and what you're saying. So I'm no doubt you do the same with your team. What have you learned about building trust with your team and with the club and with participants and families and funders, especially when times are challenging or financially tough, for example?
Yeah, I think setting goals and delivering those goals. One of the things that I will always hold everyone to account is if we write a grant application and we've put outcomes we want to measure in there, always fully understanding that actually you could aim for 90% and you get 89 or you get 80. That is just a day-to-day thing that could slip, and that could have been for multiple factors. That's fine. But the things that aren't fine is if we're going to say we're going to do something, we do it and we do it well. I think that's something that I've always done. Like, I'm very committed to things. And if I feel that I am doing something half-heartedly, I would rather just not do it. I think it's about that. And I think it's really, you have to be clear in your expectations of what you want from something. And yeah, I think it's just a journey, isn't it? It's trying to understand how people work differently as well. Like, that's been quite a journey for me. And I've always wanted people to be as passionate as I am about this organization. And sometimes you need to realize that it's a job for some people, and for other people, it is a career and a development, and they want to grow. I think it's always reminding yourselves of different people, different circumstances, different environment, and just sometimes stepping back from that and watching from a distance.
If you don't mind me asking, you touched right at the very beginning of our conversation about your experience with ADHD. Do you feel that you still have that ADHD? And if you do, does it help or hinder your role as a leader?
Yeah, so I'll tell you about the journey of that. So I was really, really young in the stages where I was really struggling. And because even with this, I refused to go to so many of the appointments because I felt like I was being told I was different, and I
Yeah,
hated that. So I didn't
yeah.
want to admit to any of it. So even now, like, yeah, I need to go through the formal part of that as a diagnosed adult. But I think the thing for me is the foundation gave me an opportunity, and I still now have so much flexibility in what I do. If I go to work and I'm really struggling, then I can go and work in a different environment. So a lot of the time people will go, well, where's Jordan today? And I'll be at a coffee shop, because I know that's where I can concentrate and that's where I can be the best version of myself. Or I'm forcing myself to work at home on Fridays because I know I can then catch up before the end of the week. So I think it's just about understanding how it works in your head, but also being acceptance that you're not like everyone else. You're your own person, so you need to work to what your strengths are. And yeah, it's just that, it's focus. I think a lot of the staff at the office will go, they can see when I'm having a really good day, or they can see if I'm just a bit all over the place. It's a bit like, Jordan, go home.
Mhm.
So Yeah, it's just, yeah, when I'm in the mode of working, I'll probably be able to get 101 things done in an hour in comparison to someone struggling to get through 10. Whereas if I'm in like a hyper focus mode, I can just nail through work, and you just become used to that's what your life is, that you need to. I try and understand other people that are going through similar situations, just because there's always an outlet of that, or I might just need to go for a run and it might
Mm.
just be that. So yeah, I think it's just about understanding how you can cope with it best and making sure that you've got that safe space around you.
Yeah, and hopefully you understand the root of that question, in that I think it's quite inspiring for people who perhaps have that aspiration to end up in a role that you're in, which is, you know, a role that lots of people would want to be in, I think.
I think for honesty's sake though, in that, and I don't mind the question at all, is like some of the feedback that I asked from my immediate team was like, how am I with you? Or like, is there something that I could improve on? And there's that kind of responsiveness to, I care so much about them staff developing, that if I go to someone's one-to-one and I'm not 100% in it,
Mm.
like, I am in it because I want them to grow and develop, but actually mentally and like my emotion, I might just be distracted with things. I almost like that. An improvement for me is actually being able to accept that and go, I'm really sorry, but can we move this to another time? And working on that. So yeah, I think you've just got to be honest with yourself, and make the people around you aware of the struggles you're having. So it's not a big brave role that you need to be the chief exec and you need to be all this nailed down person. You can show vulnerability, and I think that's what people in this role would struggle with.
Yeah, yeah. If you had to name sort of one principle that sort of quietly guides your decisions as a CEO, what would you say it would be?
I think I have this thing that rings in my head always, is just do the right thing.
Mm.
And by what I mean by that is the children come first.
Mm.
And so if there's an incident or something that we need to do, or we need to change something, my whole thing always goes to what's right for the young people.
Mhm.
And by that, I mean, if we need to make quite a considerable change to a program, or we need to change where it's delivered, I want the best outcome for the young person. So we need to be online and on board with that. So yeah, I think it's that, but also just the values and culture of what we've set up, and making sure that anything we does aligns with our core principles as an organization.
Great, thank you. Moving on now to philanthropy, to partnerships and the future. And this is a podcast for sector professionals as much as anything else. So if you were speaking directly to a potential funder or a corporate partner, how would you explain why backing Northampton Saints Foundation is a smart and meaningful way to invest in the town and its people and the community?
Yeah, so I think the wide breadth of what we do as an organization for some people is probably quite daunting, because you can't claim to be experts in every single field. However, I think when I look at the foundation and the social value guidance and project that we've recently been through, we have real clear outcomes of what our programs achieve. So in the last academic year, we obtained £3.9 million worth of social value and impact. And for every £1 provided to the charity, we return £3.57. So, in terms of actually quantifying our impact, the money that we get given is going to real worthy causes to support disadvantaged people who really need the opportunity for something different. And even then, I use the word disadvantage. I actually hate that word. It's more, for me, it's about guiding people into positive outcomes for the future. So this isn't about going, could we have £10,000 for X? It's about actually what difference could that money make to that young person's life.
Yeah. And so right now, what kinds of support, whether that's funding, skills, work opportunities, or influence, probably all of these things, but what would make the biggest difference to what you can achieve?
Yeah, so it's a project that we're talking about right now. And I'm probably sure there'll be more questions on it, but we're looking at a capital project within the organisation. At this stage, we're in the feasibility stage of that project. And this is all about having a sustainable home for the charity for the future. And what that then looks like is a capital project at the stadium. There's multiple options to it, but we're looking at a project that will be in the realms of 4 million. So I think with that, it's for organisations to see if there's an opportunity around supporting with capital project costs, or if there's an opportunity around people having previous experience within that. I can never claim to be a capital project expert at the moment, but I'm really
You were
willing to learn.
CEO before you became a CEO, so you know, you're doing all
No,
right.
it's definitely wasn't in construction or build. So I think that side of it for the capital project and just long-term legacy funding in terms of that. I think for the day-to-day organisation and what our charity structure is, it's around long-term partnership and just exploring how we can work with organisations to really gain their social impact and potentially their ESG targets while also delivering outcomes for what we do. There's some really big players in this in Northamptonshire and wider afield that have incredibly sized CSR budgets. And for us, it's about actually, does that align to what they want in the community? Because if it does, this is an organization that can deliver that. So, yeah, as we grow, it's very much maintaining what the charity is with growth, but then also looking to this capital project to give a home for the charity for the future.
Yeah. And what sort of timescales are you hoping to kind of achieve that within, ideally?
Dean, I want it tomorrow.
Right.
No, I think if I was realistically putting a number on it, I think we're really targeting by September 28.
Okay.
We will then be in said facility. We've obviously got a long journey to go on that project, and our plan with it is to really create like a pack that hopefully people can take away and then actually listen to see how they can contribute towards what that end goal is. Me, the pack's really important because it outlines what we want to achieve, but also what opportunities that building is going to give to young people in our areas.
And are you excited and scared about that in equal measure, or are you more excited or more scared?
I think I was scared until I saw the plans
Yeah.
of what the building could be,
Yeah.
and like from that I was like, this is what this charity deserves. It deserves an opportunity to call somewhere home. Currently we're in a building that we were given quite a few years ago, and we've got multiple hubs across Northamptonshire, Milton Keynes,
Right.
and I think like it just needs a home now. We've managed to grow to like I said, 54 people, and yeah, we're working in porter cabins and offices or venues that just aren't right for what we're looking to do. So yeah, it's really, really important. And I think when I saw the actual visual of what something could look like, I was just like, it gave me all the motivation to deliver that for this charity.
Excellent. Well, very best of luck with that next project. A very exciting one, I think. Thinking about the wider sector and sort of some honest advice for other sector professionals, from your vantage point, where do you think the sport for development and club charity sector is really hitting the mark, and where do you think it's still falling short? I'm assuming you speak to your peers across other clubs and perhaps other sports as well. Where do you think it's doing good things, and where do you think it needs to do more?
I think that the charities are actually all becoming really bespoke opportunities now. So if you look at all of the professional rugby clubs and all their charitable arms, they've all grown into specialists in different areas and different functions. So even if you looked at Sale, like they run a massive veterans program, and then you could look at Bath and they have quite a similar outreach to what we do. Look at Saracens and they have more of a disability focus around community rugby. So I think there's so many opportunities across the clubs that we're working with about what is next. So I think in terms of like the foundation and what we are, I think like we've become an alternative provision, prison sectored employability type
Mm.
organization. But I think there's so many gaps that our sector can work with. For example, there's charities that are delivering potentially just sport, and they feel like that is all they can deliver. But actually, that is so wellly linked to mental health, or actually is there mental health type sessions that organization can run. I went on a leadership and management course with quite a few of the Premier League football clubs, and
Mm.
one of them on there was Man United. And it was just fascinating to see their approach to addressing society's problems through sport. So yeah, I actually think there isn't much that the sport can't support with. And it doesn't always have to be, let's get up and run around and do all of those things. It sometimes can just be around the belonging of coming to a game and being sat next to someone.
Yeah, absolutely. You're in such a unique position in that respect in terms of your audience and the benefits that you can bring to that audience and anyone that's connected to them, or people that aren't
Absolutely.
connected to them as well. What do you wish people understood about the pressures and expectations of relatively small charities that sit alongside sort of big professional clubs?
And I think like a good example of that would be a project that, not a project, so something that I did in one of our leadership meetings recently. So we were all sat down, and I don't think they were necessarily expecting it, but I walked in and said, right, we're doing this today. And the project was, let's look at the charitable finances if we achieve no more grants in this academic year or
Mhm.
have no more capital support. What would we do?
Mhm.
Firstly, and then what would that look like longer term? So, like, actually, what are the decisions that came out of it? And I think what it enabled people to do is to think really hard about their individual departments. And actually, if we didn't deliver in that sector or didn't have the support or didn't have the guidance of what we hope is coming, it like, what will we do? And I then left the room and asked them to then present back on what areas they came up, and what came out of it is actually some really good tangible things of ways of working that people hadn't thought about before. But actually we were like, well, why aren't we doing them anyway? So it was a real good exercise, I think, really to unpick where there's potential opportunity in what we're currently doing, but also actually how should we look at grants and how should we look at that whole world? Because for organizations like us, it is always an anxious time because you go, well, you've got X budgeted and you think that's coming, but actually you could get nothing. So I think it's always being really clear. And I think that's what it comes back to, that let's always deliver the outcomes which we've agreed, because 9 times out of 10, the regular funding will come from sources where there's a prior understanding, or there's something that you've delivered before and you've done a really good job of it,
Yeah.
or you've learned from it together. So, yeah, I think it's about sometimes opening up and being vulnerable. And making sure that all of the staff are on the same journey as what you're on.
I think that comment about vulnerability is really important. It's all about vulnerability, isn't it, really? It's about the people you're serving being vulnerable, about your finances and circumstances being vulnerable, and being really honest. And it's through that honesty building relationships where people want to support you and put you in a stronger position. If you were speaking to anybody who was considering sort of a leadership role in a sport or community focused charity, what would be your most honest piece of advice given what you've experienced in the last year and also, all of those years that you've worked for the foundation and the experience that you've built over that time?
The thing that springs to my mind on that is just learn from everything. Watch how other leaders are. Take with you on your journey of what you're learning, the bits of leadership that you've learned from your manager,
Mhm.
and take that into your practice. Because 9 times out of 10, the way that you've been supported will be the way that you want to support others. And
Mhm.
if you're really passionate about becoming a leader in an organization, just have open ears to feedback as well, because there is always things and we're all always learning. Like sometimes you will do things that don't go as well, but again, learn from it and just don't make that mistake again. So yeah, like the vulnerability thing is a big thing for me. Yeah, like I said, I was 31 when I took the chief exec role at the foundation. And I think when I looked across the other rugby chief execs, some of them are not much older than me, but some of them are quite a bit older than me. So it was almost a realization at the level that I'd got to at a young age. But also, I want to do as good a job as everyone else is doing. I think what I've always had as well is that because of my two mentors and guidance with that, it's also being really open. So Julia Chapman from the club, like I have really honest, open conversations with her. And there's probably people that will go like, "Oh, why are you saying that?" But I think it's really important that you go, I'm struggling with this. How would you address it? And surrounding yourself with people that are in a similar position to yourself.
Something that strikes me about you is your humility, and I think another word that springs to mind is authenticity. And I think that's something that people buy into at all levels, whether they're managing you or you're managing them. It's such a great quality to have, and I don't think it comes naturally to everybody, but it's very noticeable in the way you've responded to so many of the questions I've asked. It's very noticeable. This interview has been fascinating, so informative and interesting from my perspective, at least. And we've reached the end pretty much, except for a few quick fire sort of fun questions, really. First of which is tea or coffee, and how do you take it, and how many coffees do you have a day?
So black coffee, and it's quite strong, and I have a lot more than I probably should admit to.
Okay. And for many charities, success is a mixture of skill and strategy and opportunity and good fortune. And if we apply that to the game of rugby, how do you think the end of the season is going to look for Northampton Saints Rugby Club?
I love nothing more than it to end with silverware
Yeah,
in more than one competition. But personally, I would love for us to win the Premiership again. I just think it's the one of the best things I've seen since I've been at the club.
it's a great feeling, great atmosphere when it happens as well. After
Absolutely.
a particularly heavy day dealing with tough community stories, what helps you switch off and reset?
I think exercise and also just being around my family.
Mm,
So I think having the opportunity to come back from real tough days and hearing really complex, hard situations, just being able to sit at home, cook food. Cooking's a really good one for me. I really switch off from life when I'm cooking, and I don't think about anything other than what I'm doing. Yeah, I've found that cooking's a real good one, because I can just channel everything into it.
great, thank you. And what's one thing about you that might surprise people who only know you through Northampton Saints Foundation?
It's not really a surprise, but I've got one GCSE. um, and yeah, I hold myself to account that I don't. I'm here to prove a point that you don't. It's not the be all and end all of a journey in a young person.
Yeah, and that's great for the young people and the older people that you support. That message of you can, through adversity, you've reached a great successful point in your life as a CEO, and who knows what's in store for you in the future. Finally, for anyone listening who's been moved by what you've shared and wants to support Northampton Saints Foundation, what's the best next step that they can take to do that and to offer their support?
Yeah, so I made a promise to myself. One of my New Year's resolution was to post a lot more on social media, and to become a lot more active on LinkedIn. And the reason for that mainly is because I think the job that I have is fascinating to a lot of people. And actually, I want them to hear not just all the positives. Actually, I want to be really honest and reflective on there.
Mhm.
So I would say follow me on there, and also just feel free to reach out. Like I'm so approachable. So I would love to connect with people on there and be able to have further conversations and start conversations about how we can make difference together.
That's great. And if they want to support the Saints Foundation specifically, is there a website they can go to as well? Is that quite a straightforward website?
Yeah, absolutely. So you go onto Northampton Saints Foundation, and there's drop-down boxes on there around support us and contact us, vacancies, everything. So it's kind of like we've tried to make it into a one-stop shop where you can hopefully get to everything you want. But I suppose even if it's a aspiring leader or it's someone who feels that talking to me might help or may be able to guide their next step, then I'm open in ears to help people.
Thank you very much, Jordan. Thank you so much for an open and thoughtful conversation and for showing how a rugby club's legacy can be turned into something much bigger than match day results, a long-term commitment to education, inclusion and second chances. And you've given a vivid sense of how the Foundation's programmes can catch people who are slipping through the gaps and help them rebuild confidence, skills and a sense of belonging. You've also been very honest about the realities of leading a charity alongside a professional club, the expectations, the scrutiny and the constant need to prove impact, as well as what keeps you anchored in your why and when the stakes feel high, how you continue to do that. And to everyone listening, I hope this episode has prompted you to think differently about the role that sport can play in your own community, about how foundations like the Northampton Saints Foundation can turn loyalty to a team into real measurable change in people's lives. And if you found this conversation useful or inspiring, please like, follow and subscribe to the Night Owl Philanthropy podcast and your usual platforms, and share the episode with someone who cares about sport youth opportunity, or place-based philanthropy. In our next episode, I'll be speaking with Bianca Robinson, CEO of CEO's Sleep Out, a national charity that brings business leaders together to spend a night outdoors, raise significant funds and spark action on homelessness and poverty. Bianca's work sits at the very intersection of corporate responsibility, lived experience and campaigning. So that's a conversation just like this one that you won't want to miss. Thanks, Jordan.
Thank you.